Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. We always love to get into the psychology of things, and today we're looking at something I think we all find super intriguing, uh, the subtle cues of attraction.
Oh, yeah. This is a good one.
We found this article called Seven Signs She's Sexually Attracted to You.
Yeah.
And let's face it, even if you're not out there looking for love right now, this stuff is just interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
But we don't want to just take these signs at face value, right?
Yeah.
We're going to go a little deeper with this.
Absolutely. I think the article brings up some really good points. It lists some common behaviors that we tend to associate with attraction. But just like anything else in human behavior, it's never as simple as a checklist. One of the things that I think is so fascinating is how these signs, they can have totally different meanings depending on the context, the personalities of the people involved, and even cultural norms.
Yeah, so context is really key here. One of the things that the article mentioned was a woman playing with her hair as a potential sign, but as you're saying, she could just be nervous about something else entirely.
Right, exactly. Like, what if she's about to give a big presentation or something? It's not automatically about you. It's about looking at the whole picture. Another one they mentioned that I thought was interesting was proximity. How someone might position themselves closer to a person they're attracted to.
Okay, yeah. But sometimes you're just in a crowded space and you can't really help that.
Right. Think about like a packed concert or, being on a crowded train. Sometimes you're literally smushed up against someone. It doesn't necessarily mean anything romantic.
That's so true. Like sometimes I feel like I make eye contact with someone on the street and I'm like, oh no, do they think I'm staring?
Yeah.
But I'm just looking in their general direction.
Yeah, exactly. And even if someone is intentionally moving closer to you, there could be a whole range of reasons for it. Maybe they're trying to hear you better in a noisy environment, or maybe they just have a smaller personal space bubble than you do.
So instead of jumping to all these conclusions about attraction, it's more about taking a step back and considering all those other factors that could be at play.
Exactly. And that's where it gets really interesting, because when we start digging beneath the surface, we can find some fascinating insights into the psychology of attraction. For instance, another thing the article talked about was lip focusing and making prolonged eye contact.
Oh yeah, the classic flirting moves. But is there more to it than just trying to look cute?
Oh, definitely. Our pupils actually dilate when we see something we like.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's a physiological response that's connected to dopamine, which is a neurotransmitter associated with pleasure and reward. So on a subconscious level, our bodies are literally signaling attraction.
Wow. It's like our eyes are betraying our feelings.
Kind of, yeah. And this actually ties into another point the article made about smiling. You know how a genuine smile engages different muscles than a forced one? Well, people are surprisingly good at picking up on the subtle differences. We subconsciously associate a genuine smile with warmth, trustworthiness, and yes, even attraction.
So basically, a genuine smile is not just about being polite. It's actually signaling something much deeper about our feelings towards the other person.
I think so, yeah. It's definitely something to keep an eye out for. And this leads us to another fascinating aspect of attraction, the role of touch.
Ooh, okay.
The article mentions women finding excuses to touch someone they're attracted to.
No, hold on. We're not talking about anything inappropriate here, right?
No, absolutely not. Consent is always paramount in any interaction. But there's a whole world of subtle, non-invasive touch that can communicate interest and build connection. Think about a light touch on the arm during a conversation, or brushing hands while reaching for something.
Couldn't those also just be friendly gestures, though?
They totally could. That's why it's so important to consider the context and look for clusters of behaviors rather than getting fixated on any single action.
Right, so someone could just be a touchy-feely person in general. It doesn't automatically mean they're attracted to everyone they touch.
Exactly. But if you notice someone consistently initiating those kinds of touches with you and not with other people, it might be worth paying attention to.
Okay, so it's about noticing those patterns and the subtle differences in how someone interacts with you compared to how they interact with others.
Right.
I'm starting to see how this is way more nuanced than just a simple checklist of signs.
Yeah. And that brings us to another interesting aspect that the article brought up, digital flirting.
Oh boy, digital flirting. That's a whole other can of worms. So much potential for miscommunication and overthinking every single text message.
It can be, for sure. The article points to things like initiating texts, reacting to your posts on social media, sending you playful messages, those kinds of things, as potential signs of interest.
But couldn't those just be signs of someone being friendly and wanting to stay connected? Like if someone always likes your Instagram photos, does that automatically mean they're secretly harboring romantic feelings?
Not necessarily, no. But if you think about it in the context of other behaviors, like, are they also making an effort to see you in person? Are you having deep conversations? Do they remember details you've shared with them? If you see those things too, then the digital interactions might take on a different meaning.
So it's about looking at the whole picture, both online and offline.
Yeah.
It's not just about the number of likes or the frequency of text. It's about the effort and intention behind those interactions.
Yeah, exactly. And that actually connects to another point the article made about compliments and how they can be a really powerful signal of attraction.
Oh, I love a good compliment. But I've definitely received some, let's just say, questionable ones in my time.
Haha, I think we all have. But the article emphasizes the importance of compliments that go beyond just physical appearance. Things like appreciating your sense of humor, your intelligence, your unique perspective. Those kinds of compliments suggest a deeper level of interest and connection.
So it's not just about saying you have beautiful eyes. It's about showing that you appreciate the person behind those eyes.
Exactly. That level of attentiveness and appreciation can be a really powerful indicator of genuine interest. Because ultimately, attraction is about seeing and being seen for who you truly are.
That's a really beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
So we've talked about proximity touch, eye contact, smiling, digital flirting, and compliments. Is there anything else we should be on the lookout for?
Well, the article went on to discuss the significance of effort. And I think this is where it gets really interesting because it's not just about grand gestures, it's about those subtle everyday actions that show someone's really invested in you.
So what kind of things are we talking about here?
It could be anything from rearranging their schedule to see you to remembering little details you've shared about your life. It's about going out of their way to make time for you and show that they're thinking about you.
So like if they blow off plans with other people to hang out with you, or they surprise you with your favorite coffee order.
Yeah, that could be a sign that they're really into you. But remember, it's not just about receiving those efforts, it's also about reciprocating them. Healthy relationships are built on mutual care and consideration.
For sure. It seems like there's a theme here. It's not about any one specific sign. It's about looking at how all of these behaviors work together to create a bigger picture.
Yeah, it's like a puzzle. The more pieces you have, the clearer the image becomes.
This is all so fascinating.
Yeah.
And I feel like we've only just scratched the surface of this whole topic. I'm already starting to reevaluate all of my past interactions. But before we get too lost in analyzing all of our own experiences, I think it's time to take a deeper dive into some of the more complex aspects of attraction, like flirting styles and body language.
Sounds good to me. There's so much more to explore, and I think our listeners are going to be really interested to hear what we uncover next.
All right, so we've laid some groundwork here, but I feel like we're just getting to the good stuff. This whole thing about, figuring out attraction is starting to feel like a superpower.
Yeah.
But is it really just about checking things off a list, or is there something more, intuitive going on?
I love that analogy. It's tempting to think we can just, memorize a bunch of signs and suddenly we'll be able to spot attraction like ninjas.
Right.
But in reality, it's so much more nuanced than that. It's definitely about observation, yes, but it's also about understanding the bigger picture, like personality types, individual histories, cultural influences, all of those things play a role too.
Okay, so let's say someone is hitting all those points that we talked about. The proximity, the touch, the compliments. They're even sending you memes at 3 in the morning. Is that a sure sign of attraction, or could it just be, really intense friendship?
That's such a good question, and it brings up a really important point about intention. Someone could be doing all of those things without any romantic intentions whatsoever. Maybe they're just a very physically affectionate person, or maybe they really thrive on connecting with people on a deep level.
So how do you tell the difference between genuine attraction and someone who's just, super friendly, or maybe even a little oblivious to boundaries?
Well, that's where things can get a little tricky, and that's also why clear communication is so crucial. If you're genuinely curious about someone's feelings, sometimes the most direct route is just to have a conversation with them.
I don't know about that. What if it turns out to be totally one-sided and I just make things super awkward?
I know, it can be scary, but think about it this way. Wouldn't you rather have a little bit of awkwardness than spend years and years wondering, what if?
Yeah, you're right. Better to rip the Band-Aid off, I guess. So back to the article, it also talked about how someone might act differently in a group setting if they're attracted to you. What are some things to look out for there?
Yeah, so the article suggested that someone who's attracted to you might subconsciously try to stand out in a crowd, especially if you're both part of a larger group.
So let's say I make a joke, and they're the one who's laughing the loudest. Could that be a sign?
It could be, or maybe they just really loved your joke. But the article also mentioned things like subtly mirroring your body language, finding little excuses to be near you, or initiating conversations more often when you're around.
It's almost like they're sending out these little signals to get your attention without being too obvious about it.
Exactly. And it's fascinating how much of this happens on a subconscious level. We might not even realize we're doing it. Which brings us to one of the most intriguing parts of this whole thing, flirting.
Okay, yes. Flirting.
Mm-hmm.
Because some people are like master flirts,
Right.
and others are, well, not so much.
And that's part of what makes it so fascinating. The article described flirting as this really intricate dance, with each person bringing their unique style and personality to the interaction.
Okay, so how do you know if it's just playful banter versus someone actually trying to, make a move?
That's a great question. It's about looking for those subtle nuances. Is there a playful glint in their eye? Do they hold your gaze a little longer than usual? Do they find excuses to touch your arm while they're laughing at your jokes?
It's like those little extra things that signal, hey, this is more than just a friendly conversation.
Exactly. And don't forget, flirting is a two-way street. If you're picking up on those cues and you're feeling it too, don't be afraid to flirt back.
Right. Meet their energy and see where things go.
Yeah.
But switching gears a little bit, the article also mentioned something about how people will prioritize the people they're attracted to. What did they mean by that?
It's about going beyond those initial sparks of attraction and demonstrating genuine interest through your actions. It's about making someone feel valued and important in your life, even in small ways.
So not just big romantic gestures, but also those little everyday things that show you're thinking of them.
Exactly, like texting them good morning, or remembering their favorite drink order, or moving things around in your schedule so you can fit in a coffee date.
Oh, that's so sweet. It's like saying, hey, you're important to me, and I want to make space for you in my life.
Exactly. And again, it goes both ways. If you notice someone making those kinds of efforts, don't forget to reciprocate in your own way.
I'm really starting to see how all these different signs, the little touches, the compliments, the effort someone puts in, they all kind of work together to paint a bigger picture. It's not just about checking things off a list. It's about observing the whole dynamic between you.
Absolutely. And that brings us to another piece of this puzzle, body language. The article talked about how our bodies often give away our true feelings, even when we're trying to play it cool.
Okay, body language. Tell me everything. What should we be looking for?
Well, think about it this way. When we're attracted to someone, we subconsciously want to close the distance between us, both physically and emotionally.
So things like leaning in, making eye contact, mirroring each other's movements, those are all good signs.
They can be, but like we've been saying, context is key. Someone might lean in just because they can't hear you very well. Or maybe they cross their arms because they're cold, not because they're closed off to you.
So it's not just about reading one single gesture. It's more about noticing the patterns and clusters of behavior.
Yeah.
Like if someone is constantly finding ways to be physically closer to you, that could signal something more than just casual interest.
Exactly. And one of the most fascinating things about body language is something called mirroring. It's this subconscious tendency we have to mimic the movements and gestures of people we're attracted to.
Oh, wow. So like if I take a sip of my drink and they unconsciously do the same thing a few seconds later, that could be a sign.
Could be. Mirroring is a way of building rapport and showing that you're on the same wavelength as someone. It's almost like your bodies are saying, hey, I get you. I'm in sync with you.
That's incredible. I'm definitely going to be paying more attention to that from now on. But out of all these signs to look for, is there anyone that's like the most telling? The ultimate indicator of attraction?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And to be honest, there's no magic bullet. Attraction is this complex interplay of biology, psychology, and social dynamics. There's no one-size-fits-all answer.
So instead of looking for that one perfect sign, it's more about looking at the whole picture.
Exactly. It's about those patterns of behavior, those subtle cues, those moments of connection. All of those things tell a much richer story than any single gesture or phrase ever could.
This is all so fascinating. I feel like I'm learning a whole new language, like the language of attraction.
Yeah.
But we've covered a lot of ground here, and I know there's still more to unpack.
You're right. We've explored some of the most common signs of attraction. We've talked about the psychology behind them, and we even touched on the importance of communication and context. But there's one crucial element we haven't really explored yet: intuition.
Ooh, intuition. That sounds intriguing. Let's dive into that in the final part of our deep dive. All right, so we're back and ready to wrap up our deep dive into all things attraction. We've talked about like everything from little subtle touches to those big romantic gestures. But, I'm really curious about this idea of intuition that you brought up.
Yeah, it's definitely something we often overlook when we're trying to figure out, if someone's attracted to us. But it's so important. We've all had those gut feelings about someone like that sense of instant connection, or maybe even a red flag that something's not quite right.
Yeah, for sure. It's like that little voice inside your head either saying go for it or like run away.
Exactly. And while it's definitely helpful to learn about all these signs and behaviors, sometimes our intuition just knows things before our conscious mind can even catch up.
Okay, so how do we learn to trust that inner voice? Especially when it comes to something as, complicated as attraction.
Well, it's a practice. The more we tune into our own feelings and reactions, the better we become at recognizing those signals from our intuition.
So it's not just about observing the other person, it's about paying attention to our own internal compass too. Like what feels right to us, what feels a little off, what really resonates with us on a deeper level.
Exactly. And sometimes our intuition might pick up on something that totally contradicts all those outward signs we've been talking about. Like maybe someone's doing all the right things, flirting, putting in the effort, but something just feels off to you.
That's so true. They could be saying all the right things, doing everything by the book, so to speak. But if your gut is telling you something's not right, it's probably worth listening to.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, attraction is about more than just checking off boxes on a list. It's about a genuine connection, a sense of mutual understanding and respect.
And sometimes that connection is just there.
Right.
Like, you can't always logically explain it, but you just feel it.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it. Attraction can be this incredible force that defies logic and explanation. And that's why it's so important to trust our instincts and be open to the possibilities.
I love that. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you want our listeners to take away from this?
I think the most important thing to remember is that attraction is a journey, not a destination. It's about being curious, exploring, and allowing ourselves to be vulnerable.
It's about noticing those subtle signs, trusting our intuition, and being open to those unexpected moments of connection that can happen.
Exactly. So to everyone listening out there as you navigate the world of attraction, remember to stay curious, stay open, and most importantly, stay true to yourself.
That's a great note to end on. And hey, who knows, maybe with a little knowledge, some intuition, and a whole lot of heart, you'll find yourself swept up in the magic of attraction. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.